The story revolves around the aftermath of a deadly virus outbreak, which has turned humans into zombies. The movie opens in a dark countryside cottage where Don and Alice Harris are preparing food amid a rage virus outbreak. Alice is worried about their children who are away, but Don reassures her that they are safe. The couple shares the cottage with four other survivors: Sally, Jeff, Jacob, and Karen. As they sit down to eat, Karen sets aside a plate for her boyfriend, Sam, who left the group 5 days earlier. Jacob, wanting to be honest, warns Karen that if Sam returns, he might be more interested in her blood than in the food. During dinner, a young boy bangs on the door, pleading to be let in. Despite Don's hesitation, Alice insists on letting him inside. Once the boy is in and the door is shut, he explains that his parents are infected and trying to kill him. As everyone listens, Karen looks outside and calls for Sam. An infected individual appears, attacking her. Jacob tries to pull Karen away, but she is already bitten and becomes infected herself. In a desperate move, Karen attempts to attack Jacob, but Don kills her with a crowbar. The cottage is soon occupied with infected individuals. Don fights them off and urges everyone to escape. When he loses the crowbar, he insists that Alice leave the boy behind and flee with him, but Alice refuses to abandon the child. Don, seeing the infected approaching, abandons Alice and the boy and escapes through a window. Sally and Jeff, trying to hold their ground, also become infected, leaving Jacob as the only one who manages to escape. Don runs across the farmland to the river dock, where he finds Jacob attempting to escape in a motorboat. Don gets into the boat and starts it up, but Jacob falls into the river and is attacked by the infected. As infected Jacob tries to climb back into the boat, Don kills him and escapes down the river, becoming the sole survivor. After the outbreak devastates Britain and leads to widespread starvation, a US-led NATO team arrives in London to help repopulate the city with Britons who had fled during the crisis. Sergeant Doyle, a US military sniper, keeps watch over the area while chatting with his friend Flynn, a pilot. A plane lands at the airport, bringing back Britons who had escaped the outbreak. Scarlett Levy, the chief medical officer overseeing the new arrivals, is worried to see children among the refugees. Among the new arrivals are Don and Alice's children, Tammy and Andy. During their medical checkup, Scarlett notices that Andy has heterochromia, with one green eye and one brown eye, a trait he inherited from his mother. Scarlett comments that Andy will be the youngest person in the country. The new arrivals are taken to District 1, the first secured quarantine area set up after the outbreak. During the bus ride, the military explains the safety measures they need to follow and provides a briefing about the city. Once they arrive, Andy and Tammy are reunited with their father, Don, who is now a section officer in the area. He takes them to his luxurious penthouse in District 1. As the kids explore the penthouse, Don tells them they will soon be moving to a new house. However, he explains that they cannot move into their old house because it is outside the safety zone. Andy asks about their mother, and Don lies, saying that Alice was bitten by an infected person during the attack on the cottage and he could not save her. Tammy reassures him that they are glad he survived. Meanwhile, Scarlett urges her superiors to rethink allowing minors into the quarantine area. She fears they are not fully prepared and that the virus might resurface. General Stone reassures her, insisting that the virus will not come back, and if it does, they are well equipped to manage it. Later that night, Andy has a nightmare where his mother, infected, tears off her face. When he wakes up, he tells Tammy that he is worried about forgetting what Alice looked like since they don't have any photos of her. Tammy comforts him, assuring him that he will not forget. The next morning, Tammy reveals her plan to escape the safety zone and go to their old house to retrieve Alice's pictures. Although Andy suggests they should at least tell Don, Tammy dismisses his concerns. Soon they sneak out of the zone, but Doyle spots them and alerts the other officers. After successfully crossing the safety zone, Tammy and Andy find themselves on the eerily quiet streets. They soon spot a delivery bike, and Tammy quickly heads into a nearby store to retrieve the key. With the bike ready, they ride toward their old home. After arriving at their old home, Tammy gives Andy a picture of Alice, and they start gathering their belongings. Shortly after, Andy calls out for Tammy, but gets no reply, so he goes to look for her. He hears a door creaking in the attic and decides to check. In the attic, he finds bowls of rotting food and drawings on the walls. Then he notices a figure in the shadows. It's Alice. Overjoyed to see his mother, Andy rushes to hug her, but she holds him too tightly. Struggling to break free, Andy runs, with Tammy following closely behind. Meanwhile, soldiers arrive and begin searching the house. After their search, they end up taking all three of them away. Back at District 1, the children are held in detention while Alice undergoes a decontamination bath and is strapped to a bed. During her medical examination, Scarlett prepares to take a blood sample from Alice and asks how she survived in the post-outbreak world. She notices an old bite scar on Alice's arm and becomes concerned that Alice might be infected. Meanwhile, Don visits Tammy and Andy, who are angry with him for lying about their mother's death. They demand to know the truth about what really happened. Feeling guilty for abandoning Alice, Don slips past military security to see her in the isolation room. As Don sneaks in, Scarlett's tests confirm that Alice is infected with the rage virus, but is inactive due to a natural immunity from a genetic abnormality. While Alice is immune to the virus's symptoms, she can still spread it to others. Scarlett wants to keep Alice alive for further research in hopes of finding a cure, but General Stone believes Alice should be killed to prevent any risk of a new outbreak. In the isolation room, Don begs Alice for forgiveness for leaving her behind. As they reconcile and kiss, the rage virus in Alice's saliva infects Don. Overcome by the virus, Don violently attacks Alice, killing her before breaking out into District 1 and attacking everyone he encounters on his way. Realizing the infection is spreading, General Stone and the other officials retreat to a safety bunker and initiate a code red lockdown. As the virus spreads and chaos ensues, Scarlett moves to rescue Tammy and Andy from the detention area, prioritizing their evacuation. However, in the turmoil, Andy gets separated from Scarlett and Tammy. He is rushed with other civilians into a safe room garage, where the soldiers lock them in as the power to the green zone goes out. A while later, in the garage where Andy and the other civilians are trapped, infected Don breaks in. Horrified, Andy watches as his father attacks the civilians. As the panic grows and more people become infected, the civilians break out of the garage and flee into the streets. Meanwhile, Andy manages to climb over people in cars to escape the infected by using the ventilation systems. In the streets of District 1, Doyle and the other rooftop snipers are initially instructed to target only the infected. However, as the infection spreads and it becomes increasingly difficult to distinguish between the infected and the uninfected, they are ordered to shoot everyone in sight. As Andy emerges from the ventilation system, he looks around, visibly confused. At that moment, a man named Sam calls to him, urging him to come into a nearby warehouse. At the same time, Andy is confronted by an infected individual, but Doyle intervenes, shooting the infected and allowing Andy to reach Sam safely. Doyle then witnesses one of his fellow snipers being surrounded by infected. To save his comrade, Doyle is forced to shoot him. Unable to continue killing innocents, Doyle abandons his post and joins the survivors in the warehouse. Inside the warehouse, Andy is reunited with Scarlett and Tammy, and he sadly reveals to his sister that their father is now one of the infected. As the survivors discuss their dire situation, Scarlett explains that the military will have to eliminate everyone if they cannot control the outbreak. During their conversation, Doyle arrives and offers to lead the group out of the chaotic green zone before the military begins exterminating both the infected and the survivors. He guides them through the deserted streets and contacts Flynn, who informs him that the air cavalry has been ordered to bomb District 1 to stop the outbreak. Flynn then tells Doyle to meet him at Regent Park for evacuation. As they navigate the streets, snipers open fire on the survivors, killing a couple of them. Scarlett is injured but quickly tends to her wound. Doyle notices that the snipers are missing their shots and asks Sam to help him locate the sniper's position. Sam, terrified, refuses to help. In response, Andy runs across the street, using himself as bait to draw the sniper out. Doyle seizes the opportunity and shoots the sniper, taking him down. The survivor team manages to escape over the perimeter of District 1 just as the green zone is firebombed and destroyed. Inside the bunker, the generals watch District 1 burn, while General Stone also notices that many infected individuals have survived the firebombing and are fleeing into London. Meanwhile, infected Don hides behind a wall, watching as the photo of his wife and son burns in the flames before him. With the arrival of dawn, Doyle and the other 4 survivors make their way through the desolate and ruined streets of London towards Regent's Park, where Flynn is scheduled to airlift them to safety. While they rest in the park, Andy and Tammy talk about their mother, with Tammy expressing doubt about her survival. Scarlett and Doyle discuss their decision to disobey the military, with Doyle revealing that Andy was a key reason for his change of heart. Scarlett adds that she saved Tammy and Andy because they believe the children might have inherited their mother's immunity to the rage virus, making their lives crucial to the future. Just then, Doyle receives a warning from Flynn, who informs him that the infected are closing in on the park. When Flynn arrives to pick up Doyle, he sees other survivors with him and refuses to take them aboard. As the infected draw nearer, Sam panics, clinging to the helicopter's skid and pleading with Flynn to take him away. In response, Flynn maneuvers the helicopter closer to the infected and lowers the rotor blades, slicing through them. Covered in infected blood, Sam falls from the helicopter. Flynn then flies off, instructing Doyle over the radio to head to the stadium, but refusing to save the rest of the survivors. Doyle argues with Flynn, urging him to disregard the code red and help the others. Doyle, along with Scarlett, Tammy, and Andy, continues their journey through London, being chased by the infected until they come across a nerve gas cloud. They quickly get into a car, and the gas starts killing the infected chasing them. Once the gas has cleared the area, Doyle sees soldiers with flamethrowers approaching. He exits the car to try and jumpstart it, but is killed when the soldiers spot him and burn him up with their flamethrowers. With the roads covered in gas and an air attack approaching, the remaining survivors flee into an underground transit system. Scarlett then navigates through the dark alley using Doyle's sniper rifle for guidance. As they move down an escalator, Scarlett, Tammy, and Andy get separated when Andy and Tammy fall down the stairs. Scarlett manages to find Tammy, but is soon attacked and beaten to death by an infected. Once the area falls silent, Tammy retrieves a sniper rifle and sets out to find Andy. Meanwhile, Andy stumbles onto a dark platform in the underground, where he is attacked by his father, Don. Tammy arrives and sees Don biting Andy. As Don advances toward her, Tammy shoots Don, killing him. Overcome with grief, she begins to weep. Infected Andy flees into a dark tunnel, with Tammy in pursuit. He collapses on the railway tracks, allowing Tammy to reach him. When Andy asks if he is infected, Tammy notices his eyes have turned bloodshot, just like their mother's, indicating that he has inherited her immunity. Despite this, Tammy still considers him disinfected and decides to take him with her. Later, Tammy and Andy arrive at the stadium where Flynn is waiting for Doyle. Flynn, aiming his sniper at them, asks about Doyle. Tammy tells him that they are the only survivors. Deciding to help, Flynn agrees to take the siblings and flies them across the English Channel. As they fly, Tammy and Andy look out at the destruction caused by the outbreak. 28 days later, Flynn's helicopter is found empty and abandoned, with a distress call coming over the radio. Meanwhile, a group of infected emerges from a metro exit in Paris, heading towards the Eiffel Tower.